The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. Lovin' baseball when we were 12 and innocent. I'm Ralph Tycho of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and this is one of my favorite podcasts to do. The guest is George Grimm. The only thing I can say, he has no idea how much he's meant to my life. Although I've tried to be clear, we co-wrote a book that we got published and completed first, and then published, and that was the thrill of my life. Or at least one of them. Thank you, George, for that. Thank you for joining.
Ralph. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you for the compliments. Nice to be here.
Yeah. As you know, I am compiling interviews for my next venture, and that is a book entitled Lovin' Baseball When We Were 12 and Innocent. And so let's start out with that. The premise is that at age 12, if you're a baseball fan, you are the most enthusiastic, plus combine that with the intellect that you get. You at 12, you understand a little bit, not everything, but a little bit about the game and how it's played and what it's about. Where were you baseball-wise at age 12, George?
Well, that would be like around 1963, and the Yankees were in their prime back then. And, you talk about learning about the game. It's all about, learning the history of the game. And, I was lucky enough, anyone my age was lucky enough to hear Mel Allen and Red Barber calling the games. And I remember going to Yankee Stadium with my father the first time, and back then, the deal was that I had to pay for the tickets. He paid for everything else, but I had to pay for the tickets. So I saved my money. And, you get off the train and you walk a little bit through the Bronx, and you walk up to Yankee Stadium, you buy the tickets, and you get in, and you walk up the ramp, and you see that green expanse of the field, in the middle of the Bronx, and the red clay and the white bases and foul lines. And then, back then you could buy a field level box seats for $3.50. Can you believe that?
Yes, I remember those days. And
you sat so close that you could hear the players warming up in front of you in foul territory and hearing the ball smack into the glove. Just fantastic.
Right. Who was pitching your first game, if you remember, or what players stood out to you besides Mick? He was the man.
Well, I always liked Elston Howard, and I liked Bobby Richardson. And my father always said that Joe Pepitone swung like a rusty gate. I thought Cleve Boyer was a great third baseman. I thought, other than hitting, he was very comparable to Brooks Robinson. We had Maris in right field, Mickey in center. And left field was either Tom Tresh, Hector Lopez, or Johnny Blanchard, probably. And
right.
They were a good team back then, a very good team. And
they were coming off the second dynasty of my life. The early 50s, when they won 5 in a row. That will never be equaled. And then you get into the later part where Maris and Howard and those guys meshed so well. What a privilege being a Yankee fan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this. What visiting player or players struck you?
Well, I remember one game against the Red Sox. I don't know if it was the first game or what, but the fans didn't like Lou Clinton. He was a right fielder, and they were shouting, "Clinton stinks, Clinton stinks." And because that was in the days before we said worse than that. And, that really struck me. But I always liked Frank Malzone on the Red Sox because he was just this big guy with his big nose.
And he was a Bronxite, Frank Malzone. He was from New York.
Yeah, really.
And he was terrific. There were a lot of really good third basemen, Brooks and Cleat and Ken Boyer and Matthews.
Yes.
Malzone was very underrated. He was solid with that team. Interesting you picked him. Anybody else?
No, but then after the game back then, they would let you walk around the warning track and exit through the left field bullpen, which was very cool. And I learned that day that I would never be the Yankees. I would never play center field with the Yankees because I stood out by the monuments and I couldn't see second base, let alone home plate. And I knew right then and there that this is one dream that ain't going to happen. So,
right.
You focus on something else.
Well, look for broadcasting or writing, as you did in your case. If you could identify what you liked about the game when you were 12 and what you miss about the game today, what would it be? In other words, the evolution of baseball has been monumental in our lifetimes. Yeah. What is it that you miss?
Well, it's not good. I mean, I miss the smell of a real leather baseball glove, and I miss when players' uniforms were uniform. You used to look at those old team pictures, and all the pants fell at the same place, below the knee and the calf. They all had the same amount of
stirrups came up in the same way.
Now you've got guys who look like they're going to fall over their pants, and it's just there's some players there. There's a shortstop on the Mets a couple of years ago. I don't remember his name, but he sloppy ball player. They just look so sloppy, and in the old days we used to really look up to these guys, but now I don't see how anybody can look up to these players anymore. Yeah.
How about the skill level? There is a definite improvement in basic skills, not fundamentals necessarily, not the things that are intangible, but the athletic ability of some of these guys.
Yeah,
really.
Well, they train 20. They train all year long. I mean, the guys we watched when we were kids, they all had to work in the off season because they didn't make that much money, except if you were Mickey Mantle or somebody. But all these guys now, they train all year, and they're muscle bound, and they have the speed and they have the muscles, and I don't see the pitching. I don't think the guys nowadays know how to pitch like guys like Whitey Ford and that. I mean, these guys can throw. They can throw very hard, but I don't know if they can really pitch. So there's a difference there. Right,
and you don't see complete games nowadays.
Right. Oh, yeah. There's pitches for certain innings, certain parts of the game. Yeah, and in the old days, if a pitcher started the game, he had to finish it. He was supposed to finish it, and that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I could remember Gibson in particular. He would not be taken out of a game. I mean, he'd bark, and he was determined, like you say, because that's what he thought his job was, to complete the game.
Well, Gibson was very scary. I mean, he would lean back, before he threw the ball, and that ball was either going to go over the plate or hit you in the head. I mean, he would brush you back like there was nothing.
And players today have this armament about them, elbow pads and this thing or another that takes the fear away from being hit with a hard ball coming in at 100 miles an hour.
Right.
But once it gets up over the neck, then it gets scary.
Yeah. I remember Hector Lopez didn't really wear a helmet, a batting helmet. He wore whatever they used to wear inside their cap. He used to wear something inside his cap to protect
a liner.
Yeah. He was the only Yankee I knew back then who didn't wear a helmet. So.
Very interesting. Hector, what a pair of hands, Lopez, they called him. For some inexplicable reason, he made a couple of errors, and some sports writer nicknamed him that. But he was, in reality, not a great third baseman, but a decent enough third baseman, and a terrific left fielder in a stadium that had a sun thing in left field where it made it very difficult to play. Do you remember the transition between Ralph Houck and or Casey Stengel and Ralph Houck?
No, I kind of came in when Ralph Houck was manager. I read about Casey, and I remember he said he'd never make the mistake of turning 70 again. So
one of us turned 70 recently.
Yeah,
and one of us turned 70 a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
we know what he means. Yeah.
Let me ask you about, and we've talked about this many times, the transition you made into being a hockey fanatic from baseball. How did that get started?
Well, that was my father. I mean, my father took me to baseball games, but he took me to a Ranger game very early on. I think the first exposure I had to hockey was on a Saturday afternoon game on TV. The Rangers and the Canadians, and Bud Palmer, a former Nick player, was doing the play-by-play. I remember that. But he brought me to the Ranger games, and he after the game he walked me around the garden, showed me where the penalty box was and the players' bench. He pointed up to the press box. And he kind of let it known to me that this is our team. So, get used to it. And so he cursed me, because, we only won one Stanley Cup since then, and we might not win another one soon. So, but, I owe a lot to him. All the good things that have happened to me as far as writing is concerned has happened because of the Rangers and because he introduced me to the Rangers all those years ago. So I have to thank him for that. That's for sure.
That was your real passion. Now, let me ask you this to get to know you a little bit, as I have. What if it weren't for sports? What would be your passion? If it weren't for hockey, if it weren't for baseball, what goes through your mind on a moment-to-moment basis?
Well, I think one thing is, if it wasn't for my interest in sports, I probably would have done better in college, because I went nights, and anytime the Rangers had a Wednesday night game that I wanted to go to, I'd skip class and go to the game. But as far as something else, I probably would have wrote about something. I don't know what. I don't know what I would have been passionate about. Certainly wouldn't be politics or anything. It'd just be probably life, getting through life. So.
Yeah, that's a very, very good answer. Getting through life. And as we both know, it isn't always easy, but
right.
There's a lot of satisfaction to be gleaned as you make it through these different levels. If you could look back, if one could look back on each promotion, look at it as a promotion.
Right.
50s, 60s, 70s, and it's all different, and it's challenging, and it takes skill to get through it. It takes a certain something that gets us through it or doesn't get us through it.
Well, you have to learn from your mistakes. You gotta remember what you did before and say, well, do I want to do that again, or do I want to do something different? And I'm at the age now. I don't know about you, but I'm at the age now where I look back on a lot of things I did in the past, a lot of choices I made, go to this path or that path, and how it would have changed my life had I gone some other way instead of the path I took. And I think that the main thing is that you have to think that if you're happy where you are now, you made the right choices. So that's
right. Whatever choices you made got you to where you are now.
Right.
And if you had made different choices, they may have turned out better in the short term, or you might have gotten hit by a bus or whatever. And that's part of the thrill of it all. You'd never know, and seeing what's going to happen. You want to stick around to see. I want to stick around to see my kid get old.
Right.
As an example, or if I someday have grandkids, and not that I don't have surrogate grandkids and loved ones around me, and it doesn't have to all be family. I've learned that about community and living, and learned that through the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'll tell you that. I have such wonderful people around me, you included, that I have a very satisfying life, and I have lived to the age expectancy, 76 basically, and I did it my way. So everything else is sprinkles.
That's right. That's right.
And in our relationship of writing the book, you taught me a lot about patience and about really, and could not have done it not only with your writing, without your writing skills, but your skills as a human. And so I just want to say,
thank you, Ralph. Thank you very much.
I'm very grateful.
Thank
and let me ask you one thing we didn't talk about. What kind of music were you listening to back when you were 12, 13, and coming into your own?
Yeah, well, back then in the 60s, probably the Beatles and the Four Seasons and WABC and WMCA on the radio, and
Cousin Brucey.
Pleasant Brucey and Dan Ingram and Harry Harrison and all those great names from the past. Dan Daniels, all those groups from back then. The Motown groups when they were first coming in. Dead Clock 5.
Yeah, you mentioned Dan Daniels. Was he not a journalist first?
I don't know. I know him as a radio guy. He was on one of the channels, and then in later years he was on WCBS FM, which was more recently.
Oh,
I think he passed away.
I wonder if it's the same guy.
It could be. I don't know.
And music and books. What did you read early on?
It's funny. Early on, I read baseball books, and my father helped me learn how to read when I was very young, and he gave me a collection of Sherlock Holmes stories and Jack London's Call of the Wild, and I read them. And as far as baseball books, there was a book I had by Henry Rosenthal, I think. It was a large format book called Baseball, and it had each chapter had an event in baseball history, like Tingers to Everson Chance, Babe Ruth's called shot, Fred Merkle. Each chat, and you could read about them and have a foundation of the past, which I found was very interesting because any kid when they learn about a game, they think the game started right then and there. They have no idea that it's got a history, and then you maybe get a baseball card and you see that this guy played for Kansas City 2 years ago, and then he played for somebody else before that. And then you say, oh, wow, baseball was happening 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Right. And then you realize that there's a history to all sports. So, and that's the interesting thing. Then you start getting into the old players, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, John McGraw, Mickey Cochran, the Negro Leagues. It's just a fascinating thing to look through the history of all sports.
I'll ask you this, the final question. Is baseball a microcosm of life, or is life a microcosm of baseball?
Well, as far as life is concerned, as Nuke LaLoosh once said, sometimes it rains, sometimes what did she say? Sometimes it rains. I forgot. I hear this great moment in my life, and I forget. Can't remember what he said.
Win some, lose some, and some get rained out.
Some get rained out. Think about that. So that's life. That's life.
All right. Hey, thank you for being a part of my life, George.
Can I tell you about the highlight of my baseball career?
Oh, please.
All right. Now, as far as playing baseball is concerned, I was terrible. I was awful. And every summer we used to have this church family picnic, and we used to play baseball in this beautiful field up here in Rockland County. And for this game, somehow I ended up in center field. Now, I could not catch a fly ball. I could catch a ball hit to me. I could hit a ball. I could catch a ball. I had a run to catch. But if the ball went up in the air and was coming down into my glove, I would drop it. Just the way it was. So the other team is at bat. I'm in center field. There's men on first and second. The ball comes to me in center field. Now, all these people who are playing in this game know me. They know I'm going to drop the ball. So they take off. I caught it, and I held on to it. I caught it. I caught the ball. Whipped it to second base. He whipped it to first. Triple play. That's the highlight of my life. That's the highlight of my baseball career. Right there.
Wow. That is beautiful. You remember the guys, because baseball's is who you played with and who you played against.
Right.
Remember the guys who took off, too.
Yeah.
And in your head.
Had that game been on WPIX, Melon would have said, how about that?
Oh, wow. Thanks, George. Terrific interview.
Okay,
we got to know you even a little bit more, and you will be included in the book. It's now a podcast, Lovin' Baseball When We Were 12 and Innocent, and it will be in an upcoming book. And I'm privileged that you're here.
No, me too, Ralph. My privilege too. I'm happy to be here. You're a
be
good
well.
friend.
Say hi to Teresa and stay healthy.
Yeah. All right, you too, Ralph. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.